The kingdom of Avarice was known far and wide for its emerald valleys, towering marble palaces, and the kindness of its rulers. At its heart stood King Aldrich, a man both loved and feared, and Queen Selene, whose beauty was often compared to the glow of the full moon. But above all, the kingdom cherished their daughter, Princess Ilara. Born beneath a rare celestial alignment, many whispered she carried within her the fate of avarice itself. Gentle, clever, and unafraid of wandering beyond the gilded halls, Ilara was adored by the people. Yet such light inevitably casts long shadows, and darker forces watched her every step. The story began on the eve of her 17th birthday. The palace had been alive with celebration, lanterns swayed in the night air, music spilled from every chamber, and nobles from distant lands flocked to Avarice with gifts. Ilara, though, felt restless. Surrounded by polished jewels and endless flattery, she longed for the simpler company of the kingdom's gardens and the laughter of its common folk. Under the silver light of the moon, she slipped away from the grand feast, seeking a moment of quiet among the rose gardens beyond the palace walls, but silence was not what greeted her. As she stepped through the winding paths, she heard whispers, low voices carrying words she could not fully understand. Following the sound, she came upon the shadowy outlines of two cloaked figures near the old fountain. Their movements were quick and secretive, their language unfamiliar. Before she could call for the guards, one of them glanced up. Their eyes, gleaming unnaturally pale in the dark, locked with hers. In that single instant, Ilara felt an icy chill run through her body, as if something ancient had marked her. She turned to flee, but the world seemed to collapse in on itself. A strange smoke swirled around her feet, thick as fog, pressing in from all sides. The faint fragrance of iron and ash filled her lungs, and her vision blurred. She tried to cry out, but the sound was swallowed by the air. The last thing she saw was the pale figure raising a hand, a faint green glow pulsing in their palm like a dying ember. Then, darkness claimed her. By dawn, the palace was in chaos. Guards scoured every hall and courtyard. Servants whispered of vanished footsteps, of roses crushed where none should have walked. The king, usually so composed, stood pale with fury and fear, while Queen Selene wept silently in her chambers. Princess Ilara was gone, vanished without a trace. And with her disappearance, a cold shadow seemed to spread across the kingdom of Avarice, as though the land itself knew something terrible had begun. When dawn's first light spilled over the towers of Varenwood Castle, it revealed a scene that startled the royal attendants. The chamber of the 12 princesses was scattered with ribbons and wilted petals, as though a grand celebration had taken place in secret. The red shoes, now faintly glowing like embers in the ashes of a dying fire, sat by Ivy's bedside. The king's patience had worn thin. For the 5th night in a row, he had summoned guards to watch the chamber doors, yet none had seen a single soul pass. The sight of the worn slippers filled him with dread. Something unearthly was happening beneath his own roof. Paragraph 2. Avellini's suspicions of Eleni, the eldest, had always been more observant than her sisters. She noticed how Ivy's cheeks glowed rosy, as though she had danced through dreams, and how the red shoes seemed to hum faintly when no one was near. The sisters tried to laugh it off, but Avellini sensed something stirring beneath the castle, something far older than their family's rule. If these walls could speak, she whispered to Celise one afternoon while folding their festival shawls, they would tell us where we go when we close our eyes. Celise shivered at her words, recalling the strange sensation of being guided by music she could not hear. Paragraph 3. The discovery of the stone door that evening, just as the castle's long corridors darkened under torchlight. Rhea, the bold third sister, felt a faint draft near the far wall of their chamber. Curious, she pressed her palm against the stone and was startled when a carved sigil, shaped like two interlocked roses, shimmered faintly beneath her touch. The stones shifted with a deep grinding groan, revealing a hidden stairway spiraling downwards into darkness. The red shoes, still resting near Ivy's bed, pulsed brighter as if urging them to descend. For a moment, fear held the sisters back. Then Ivy stepped forward with wide-eyed determination. Paragraph 4. The descent below. One by one, lanterns in hand, the 12 sisters began their descent. The air grew cooler as they spiraled downward, the stone steps slick with moisture and echoing with distant drips of unseen water. Strange vines, thin as silver threads, crept along the walls, glowing faintly with a bluish light that made the chamber feel like a dream beneath the earth. Sally's harp strap brushed the wall, and it emitted a hollow note that vibrated through the stones, like the whole stairwell had been carved from a single piece of crystal. The deeper they went, the stronger the distant music became, a slow, haunting waltz that wrapped around their hearts like a promise. Paragraph 5. The silver lake. At the base of the stairway, the sisters stepped into a vast underground cavern where a silver lake stretched into darkness, its surface so smooth it reflected their lanterns like stars scattered on water. A narrow bridge of black marble arched across the lake to a distant pavilion of pale crystal columns. The melody they had heard above was now clearer, drifting from the pavilion with a sorrowful sweetness. Ivy's red shoes shimmered once more, pulling her toward the bridge. As the sisters hesitated, Avellini took Ivy's hand and nodded silently. Together, they stepped forward onto the bridge, unaware that the water below rippled as if something stirred deep beneath its glassy surface. The 12 sisters held their breath as they crossed the narrow black marble bridge stretching over the silver lake. The water below lay so still it reflected the vaulted cavern's ceiling like a second sky. Halfway across, a ripple disturbed the glassy surface, followed by another, as if something unseen swam beneath them. Ivy tightened her grip on Avellini's hand, but the melody drifting from the distant pavilion seemed to calm her fears. Every step they took made the red shoes sparkle brighter, until their glow rivaled the lantern flames. Behind them, the cavern's echoing silence was broken only by the faint lap of water against the bridge's supports. Paragraph 2. The crystal pavilion. At the bridge's end stood a pavilion of pale crystal columns, open to the cavern's air. Its ceiling was an arch of translucent stone etched with patterns of moons and stars. Dozens of silver lanterns floated in midair like fireflies trapped in glass, illuminating a polished floor inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Waiting within the pavilion was a long table laden with fruits glistening as if dusted with frost, goblets filled with shimmering rose-colored nectar, and masks carved in the shapes of birds and foxes. A velvet-robed figure in a silver half-mask bowed to the sisters and said in a voice smooth as flowing water, "Welcome, daughters of Varenwood. The night is young, come dance while the moon beneath the earth still rises." Paragraph 3. The phantom musicians. From the shadows emerged a group of phantom musicians, tall, thin silhouettes of shimmering silver dust who played lutes, flutes, and violins that shone like frozen starlight. The haunting waltz that had lured the sisters downward swelled into a lively melody, filling the pavilion as if carried by the heartbeat of the cavern itself. Salise, drawn to the sound, plucked her harp and found it harmonized perfectly with their tune. Her strings glowed faintly blue as she played, as if the instrument had always been meant for this place. The sisters began to sway, unable to resist the rhythm. Paragraph 4. The dance of 12. The velvet-robed host gestured to the center of the pavilion, and the polished mother-of-pearl floor began to shimmer like liquid moonlight. Ivy stepped forward first, her red shoes guiding her as though alive, spinning her in graceful arcs. One by one her sisters joined, their gowns sweeping out like blossoms in a storm of petals. The phantom musicians' tempo quickened, the very air hummed with unseen magic. The sisters danced until their laughter echoed like chimes, and even Avellini, usually reserved, lost herself in the waltz. They felt lighter than air, almost as though the cavern was carrying them aloft. Paragraph 5. the unseen watcher yet far across the silver lake, hidden in the darker reaches of the cavern, something watched. A figure cloaked in ragged black stood motionless among jagged rocks, its face obscured beneath a hood. Though silent, it leaned forward as if drinking in the sight of the dancing princesses. A single ring of pale gold glinted on its shadowed hand, pulsing faintly with each beat of the music. The silver water at its feet trembled as though stirred by a presence far older than the enchanted court. When Ivy spun past the edge of the pavilion, she thought she saw a ripple in the distant darkness, but the music's enchantment pulled her attention back before she could wonder. The princesses awoke in their chamber with dawn's light creeping across the walls. The red shoes sat at the foot of Ivy's bed, their glow dimmed to a dull crimson ember. Around them lay ashen dust, the remnants of their once fine dancing slippers, worn to tatters by their endless waltzing. The sisters spoke little over breakfast, their father's worried eyes followed them like shadows. The king's voice broke the silence. The royal guard will double its watch tonight. I will not have my daughters vanishing into darkness any longer. His tone was firm, but the sisters exchanged uneasy glances, each unwilling to admit that the secret path lay not beyond the door but beneath their feet. Paragraph 2. Avellini's unease. Avellini, who had once been swept up in the enchantment of the underground pavilion, now felt the heavy pull of doubt. She recalled the way the music had seemed to seep into her veins, drowning her thoughts until she couldn't stop dancing. We never asked where that music came from, she murmured to Celise while the others dressed for the day. Or who that masked host really was. Celise hesitated, fingers pausing on her harp strings as she admitted she felt as if the song still echoed faintly in her chest. Both sisters turned to glance at Ivy, so small and bright-eyed, who was tracing the edge of the red shoes with her fingertip as if listening to them whisper. Paragraph 3. The ringed stranger. That night, when the moon rose and the guard stood watch at the doors, the 12 sisters gathered around the hidden stairway once more. Ivy clutched the red shoes tightly as if they were a talisman, and with each step down the spiral staircase, a faint warmth spread from the shoes' glow into her palms. Unseen by them, across the silver lake in the shadows of the cavern, the cloaked figure reappeared. This time the sisters caught a fleeting glimpse, a ripple of movement at the edge of their lantern light, and Rhea, ever bold, whispered, "We're not alone tonight." They hurried across the bridge, their hearts beating in sync with the distant, beckoning waltz. Paragraph 4. The pact revealed the velvet-robed host awaited them again, silver mask gleaming, but now the phantom musician's song carried a somber undertone. As the sisters took their places on the glowing dance floor, the host raised a goblet of rose-colored nectar and spoke, "You honor an old pact made long before your father's reign. For every night you dance, the cavern's magic breathes life anew. Refuse, and the pathways beneath your castle will close forever, leaving you trapped in a world without song." His words, though calm, felt like an invisible chain tightening around their hearts. Avellini's voice trembled as she asked, "What do you gain from this pact?" But the host merely smiled, as if her question were a foolish child's riddle. Paragraph 5. The warning beneath the lake. As the sisters danced again, trying to mask their growing dread with graceful spins, Ivy noticed something strange. The silver lake's glassy surface beneath the bridge was no longer still. Faint golden lights shimmered beneath the water like a constellation trying to break through. She slowed her steps and leaned over the railing to look closer, just in time to see a pale, skeletal hand of light brush against the underside of the bridge before dissolving back into the depths. Ivy gasped, but the music surged louder, drowning her voice. Across the lake, the cloaked watcher's golden ring flickered ominously in the dark, pulsing brighter with every beat of the waltz. The fifth night was unlike the others. A storm brooded over Varenwood, thunder rattled the castle's towers while a blood-red moon rose over the misty hills. Inside the royal chamber, the sisters sat in uneasy silence as the red shoes glowed brighter than ever, casting streaks of crimson across the stone floor. The king, sensing something dire, ordered the doors barred and kept his sword at his side. Yet the moment the moon's light touched the window panes, the hidden rose sigil in the wall shimmered and the stone door ground open on its own, revealing the stairway as if summoned by an unseen command. Paragraph 2. The host unmasked. Drawn as if by invisible threads, the sisters descended again to the silver lake, the red shoes glow lighting the steps. The masked host awaited them in the crystal pavilion, but this time the velvet robe seemed frayed and the silver mask had begun to crack down the middle. When Avellini stepped forward and demanded the truth, the figure laughed softly, an echo that trembled like breaking glass. With a slow gesture, he removed the mask, revealing a face pale as moonstone and eyes that shimmered gold like the ring worn by the cloaked watcher. "I am the keeper of the lake," he said. "Bound here by an ancient bargain with your ancestors, I offer beauty and dance, and in return I feed on the life-spark of each step you take in those red shoes." Paragraph 3. The cloaked figure's arrival. Before the sisters could speak, the cloaked figure emerged from the shadows across the lake and strode onto the bridge, water rippling angrily at each step as though the cavern itself recoiled. The keeper stiffened, his golden eyes flashing with anger. The figure threw back its hood to reveal a gaunt woman with hair white as frost, an old sorceress who had once served the queen. The gold ring on her finger flared like a tiny sun. "The pact ends tonight," she cried, her voice echoing across the cavern. "Your mother's final wish was to free her daughters from this curse. I come to honor it." Paragraph 4. The shattered shoes. The keeper raised his arms, summoning a spiral of silver water that surged toward the bridge, but the sorceress struck the ground with her staff. A tremor split the black marble path, sending shards of stone into the glowing lake. Ivy clutched her red shoes as they burned hot against her skin, their glow turning white-hot. Realizing the shoes were the heart of the enchantment, Avellini grasped Ivy's hands and shouted above the roar of the magic, "We have to let them go." With tears on her cheeks, Ivy pulled the shoes from her feet and hurled them into the lake. The shoes struck the water with a blinding flash of crimson light that burst into sparks and sank out of sight. Paragraph 5. The dawn of freedom. The waltz died mid-note. The phantom musicians dissolved like dust in the wind, and the crystal pavilion dimmed as cracks spread across its moon-etched ceiling. The keeper staggered as though unbound from an unseen tether, gave a faint smile tinged with sorrow, and faded into a ripple of silver mist that sank beneath the lake. The sorceress lowered her staff, her ring's glow fading at last. As the cavern walls trembled, a new stairway opened behind the sisters, leading upward to a dawnlit garden blooming inside the earth. Together they climbed back to the surface, their slippers ruined but their hearts lighter than ever before. The king met them at the castle gates at sunrise, embracing each daughter in relief as the last of the storm clouds broke to reveal a clear sky.